Welcome back to the Iwi Den. This is the Rhythm Changes series, and this is part 3 of the series, the bridge and the cycle. The B section of a Rhythm Changes song is known as the bridge. In its simplest form, the chords of the bridge are E7, A7, D7, G7, each being 2 measures in length. Now the bridge is a critical section of the form, and we're going to take a thorough look at its construction, the goal being to increase our harmonic understanding, which will in turn open our ears to hear it in new ways. So interestingly, the golden ratio, considered the moment of most aesthetic importance, happens during the bridge of a Rhythm Changes song. However, the form of the tune is A-A-B-A. So if you practice the song from start to finish, you'll consistently strengthen the A section 3 times more than the B section, thus creating greater comfort for you over the A section. If there's a detectable difference between the playing level of the A section and B section, it may be very difficult, if not impossible, to make the B section the high point of your chorus or solo. So we need to learn as much as we can to boost our level or performance over the B section. There is so much music in this straightforward, simple 8 bars of the bridge. It offers us a perfect place to dive into understanding and hearing music on a deeper level. So we're going to take a look at the harmonic function, the cycle, secondary dominance, and then we'll get into a workout implementing the bebop scales over the bridge. Harmonic function can be a bit abstract when you first discover it. So let's begin to make some sense of it by looking at some very basic harmonic function. There's 3 questions that you need to answer. One is, what's the key? This could be referring to the entire song or just a section of a song. The first note of a major scale is considered to be the key, and it is home, the place of greatest resolution, a point of rest, and sometimes considered positive polarity. So second, what scale degree are the chords in this section built upon inside the key? So every major key has 7 chords, 1 built from each scale degree. So if we took a C scale and we numbered the notes and built a chord from each one, it'd be the 1 chord would be C major, the 2 chord would be D minor, the 3 chord would be E minor, the 4 chord would be F major, the 5 chord is G dominant, the 6 chord is A minor, and the 7 chord is B half diminished. Question number 3, what is the character of the chord? Does the chord want to stay and rest, or does the chord have energy and want to go? This is the most useful part of understanding harmonic function, knowing what chords want to do, because if we know what chords want to do, then we can play that kind of chord, even if the lead sheet doesn't have them, to make the listener predict the future. So here is an example of a very simple harmonic function. So here's our chord progression. C major for a measure, G dominant for a measure, C major for a measure. So now we have to answer our questions. What key is it in? Well, it starts on C and ends on C. It's predominantly C. Let's say it's C major. So what scale degrees are the chords built from? Well, we just figured out it's C major, so the C would be the 1. So C major is the 1 chord. Now we've got to figure out what scale degree the G is. We just count it from C, 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's the G. So the G7 is the 5 chord. So question number 3. Does the chord want to stay and rest, or does the chord have energy and want to go? Well, C is the 1 chord and it's the key that we're in, so we already know that this is home, so this is the point of rest, and it wants to stay there. So let's look at the G7, right? The G7 is also called the dominant chord, and it really wants to go. Here I'm going to play in a different inversion. So here's the C chord, here's the G chord, and it really does want to resolve back to the C. So this chord has a little bit of dissonance and energy in it. That's called negative polarity. It really wants to pull home, right? So the 5 chord is like a big giant arrow sign pointing into the future. And it allows the listener to sense and predict where the song seems to want to go next, which is a very useful tool for us when we're improvising, because we can imply that the song is going to go someplace, right? So some people refer to the 5 chord as having negative polarity. It really just has dissonance, craving resolution. So it is helpful to understand, like, where is that dissonance coming from in the 5 chord and why is it pulling to the C major? Well, there's a strong tension that exists in the 5 chord between the 3rd, which is the B, and the flat 7, which is the F. And we're going to see as we move along that the 3rd and the 7th of chords are super important, and especially over dominant chords. So the G is a dominant chord, and this interval is super important. It's known as the tritone. It's called a tritone because it's built 3 whole steps. So it's like whole step, whole step, whole step, 3 whole steps. It's called the tritone. Doesn't matter how you remember it, and I'm just saying that because that's a very popular way to think about it and where the name came from. All right, so it needs resolution because this is a very dissonant, this is filled with a lot of negative polarity. And if we look at it inside in reference to C, we can hear it, right? So here's a key of C. If we play the F, melodically it really wants to pull to the E. And the B wants to pull to the C. So when they're presented harmonically, both at the same time, they really are an arrow sign pulling to resolution to the 1 chord. Listen to this. So this is negative polarity pulling firmly to positive polarity, or the dominant chord resolving to the 1 chord. This movement leads us to the cycle, which is C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, C sharp, F sharp, B, E, A, D, G. And notice the bridge to rhythm changes, which is E, A, D, G, is part of the cycle. And as always, there's some debate as to what to call it. Is it the circle of fourths? Is it the circle of fifths? Honestly, it doesn't matter which way you see it. But after you decide which way makes the most sense to you, it's best to always think the same way, because that'll allow your mind to get faster and faster. I call it the cycle, but I think of it as the circle of fourths because the next key is always 4 notes in, right? So it's C, C, D, E, F, 4 notes into the C scale, and you get to F. Then if you go to the F scale, F, G, A, B flat. And if you go to the B flat scale, it's B flat, C, D, E flat. So we're just working our way around the cycle, and it'll go the whole way around like that. So that just makes sense to me. Also, the C7 resolves to the F. So the C7 is the 5 chord to the F, and the F7 resolves to the B flat. So the root movement of the 4th is the most common in our culture. So let's just look at some examples. Here, I'm in iReal Pro, and I'm going to go to the iwi song list. And we'll just start at the top, and let's look at After You've Gone. So it looks like this starts on an F chord, and then it goes to a B flat, which is a 4th. Well, B flat to C, that's a 2nd, so that doesn't count. C to E, that's a 3rd. But E to A, now that's a 4th. A to D is a 4th. D to G is a 4th. G to C is a 4th. C to F is a 4th. And then we're back to the F to B flat. So most of this A section is 4ths. Well, let's just look at the next tune. So Afternoon in Paris starts on a C. C, F, B flat. Well, C to F is a 4th, F to B flat is a 4th, B flat to E flat is a 4th, E flat to G is a 4th, A flat to D is a sharp 4, D to G is a 4th, G to C is a 4th. Let's just drop down, we'll look at one more. Let's look at all the things you are, because this is really going to be a lot of 4ths. F to B flat is a 4th, B flat to E flat is a 4th, and E flat to A flat is a 4th, A flat to D flat is a 4th. This is kind of a minor 2nd, but then we're back to D to G is a 4th, G to C is a 4th. And if you go through standard repertoire, you're going to find 4ths pretty much everywhere. All right, so the rhythm changes bridge, the E7, A7, D7, G7, is the cycle, or the cycle of 4ths. It's also an example of secondary dominance, which is our final theory discussion for today. So let me explain that term. Here's our example of rhythm changes in the key of C. If we look at the bridge, we see E7, A7, D7, G7, and the G7 is the 5 of C, so that sets us up for the final A section of rhythm changes. And we've already discovered that G7 is the 5 chord of C, and it is considered the dominant chord in the key of C, and it can be represented 5-1. So let's look at the D7. Well, in comparison to the G, D is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So D is the 5th chord. It's the dominant chord of G. Well, it's not really in the key of C, but it leads us to the G, which then leads us to the C. So that D7 is by definition a secondary dominant, and it's represented as a 5 of a 5 of 1. So now let's just work backwards through the progression. So likewise, the A is the 5 of the D7. So now we have a stack of secondary dominants, so it would be the 5 of the 5 of the 5 of the 1, right? So ultimately the target is the resting point is still C major at the beginning of the A section. So finally we have the E7, and the E7 is the 5 of the A. Right? So now we've expanded our stack of secondary dominants. So we have a 5 of a 5 of a 5 of a 5 of a 1. So it starts to get a little bit tricky in your imagination to see all those 5s, but ultimately you can see the resting point is the C major, and the bridge has just become a big arrow sign leading us to the resolution at the final A section. For this reason, many people call the cycle of fifths, and they're referring to its harmonic function as a 5 of a 5 of a 5 of a 5. I strongly, for this reason, recommend practicing all your scales around the circle of force until this becomes a second nature. And we need all the keys because later we'll be using substitute chords. The most common substitute chord for C7 is F sharp 7. So it'll certainly be better to have those scales under your fingers and in your mind before we need them. So now let's check out today's workout. Okay, so let's just dive into our workout. You get your EWI out and ready to play. And the first thing we're going to do is loop the bridge because we want many repetitions of the bridge. We're trying to offset the 3-to-1 ratio created by the form, which is A-A-B-A. So we want to get more repetitions of the bridge if we can. On our scale sheet that we've been working on since part 2 is the bebop scale up and down. So just like this. Here's E bebop. But if we played it like that, it actually would last, or the last note of that scale would be the first bar of the A7 chord. We don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to stop the scale on the third. So we're playing from the root to the root to the third. And that'll be on beat 4 of the second measure, giving us 1 beat to get ready to play the A. So it's going to sound like this. Here it is in the key of E. And then we go to the A, and we'll play the A root to root and back down to the third, same way. So it goes A to C sharp. And then we go to the D, so it'll be D to D to the F sharp. And then finally the G, G to G, and end on the B. And we'll do that until we can do it comfortably, but that would be the first repetition of the workout. The second repetition of the workout, let's do it upside down. So we'll start on a high E, we'll go to a low E, and then play up to the 7th. Then the same thing with the A to A, and then to the G. And then D to D and up to the C. Then G to G back up to the F. So that's the second repeat. And the third repeat, let's improvise starting on roots, up and play an up or down. We can, so we can improvise, but we are limiting ourselves to beginning our phrases on the roots. And what we want to do through this series of exercises is to get really in tune with the chord tones, the 1, the 3, the 5, and the flat 7. So here we go. I'm going to demonstrate the exercise. First time through, up and stop on the 3rd. The second time through, down, stop on the 7th. Third time through, improvising, starting on roots. Here we go. Okay, so the next part of this exercise is exactly the same, except we're going to start on different chord tones. We're going to start on the 3rd and play to the 3rd and then back down to the 5th. So in the key of E, it'll be G sharp, play up to the G sharp, then play down to the B, right? And I'll just tell you each one as we get to it. So here's the E starting on the G sharp, playing to the G sharp, and back down to the B. Then the A will be C sharp to C sharp to E, 3rd to 3rd to 5th. So over D7, the 3rd is F sharp, so we play F sharp to F sharp, and the 5th is A. Over the G7, the 3rd is the B, so we play B to B and back down to D. Okay, then we'll do the exact same thing upside down. So we'll start on the G sharp, we'll play down to the G sharp, and then back up to the root. So it goes 3rd, 3rd, root. So over A, it'll be C sharp to C sharp to A. Over D7, F sharp to F sharp, and back to D. Then over G7, B to B, and back up to G. And then we'll improvise a chorus that is starting on 3rd. So here we go. Okay, so let's move on to part 3 of this workout, and it is going to be starting on the 5th. We play from the 5th to to the 5th, and then we end on the flat 7. So in the key of E, it's going to be B to B and end on the D. In the key of A, or A7, it's going to be E to E and end on the G. Over A7, or over D7, is going to be A to A and end on the C natural. And then over G7, it's D to D, end on the F natural. So now let's do down from the 5th. So we play from the 5th, down to the 5th, and back up to the 3rd. So in the key of E, it's going to be B to B and back up to G sharp. In the key of A, it's E to E and back up to C sharp. In the key of D7, it's A to A and back up to F sharp. Then in G, it's D to D and back up to B. So remember, the first one is 5th to the 5th and then back to the flat 7. Here we go. Okay, so now there's only one chord tone remaining. So we've done an exercise up and down from the root, up and down from the 3rd, up and down from the 5th. So now we're going to do up and down from the flatted 7th. So in E7, we're going to start on the D, which is the flat 7. We'll play to the flat 7, which is another D, and then we'll play back down to the root. All right, so here we go. Here's E, 1, 2. Then the A7 will be G to G and back down to A. Then it'll be over the D7, C to C and back down to D. And now we're going to play over the G7, F to F and back down to G. Okay, so now we just do the same thing backwards. So over the E7, it's going to be D natural to D natural and back up to B. So over the A7, it's G natural to G natural and back up to E. Over the D7, it is C natural to C natural and back up to A. And G7 is going to be F natural to F natural and back up to D. And here we go. The third time, we'll improvise starting on flat 7s. So I'm going to loop it. And here we go. Up and down, flat 7, back down to the root. very strong set of exercises to get started over the bridge to rhythm changes. One, it's making you be conscious of the bebop scale, which is vocabulary that's often used over the bridge, but it's also making you aware of where you're beginning your phrases on chord tones. And as we go along, we're going to talk about how the bebop scale works and how it likes to balance to chord tones. And you're being aware of what chord tone you're playing is of utmost importance. Now, it was on purpose that I didn't write these exercises down, because you need to be able to see this stuff in your imagination. So at the very beginning, remember, you're in a vocabulary stage. So being able to spell it is more important than how fast you play it. And just keep running these patterns or saying the scales in your mind until you can keep track of the letter and the number. And that's going to benefit you greatly as we progress through this series. And it's going to help you to start to be able to hear what the root sounds like, what the third sounds like, what the flat seven sounds like. All right, I know this was a long one, but it was very important, and there was a lot to cover. So hit like if this was beneficial to you. Subscribe if you want to know when the next one is released. And have a great day and enjoy yourself practicing.